Tuesday, the 30th of June 2020. It's the Royal Exchange Matchday Live. Reading versus Brentford kicking off in just over an hour's time, which means team news is in just a couple of minutes' time. Dan Wimbush joins me from his home. Hello, Dan.
Richard, pleasure to be back. Thanks for inviting me back on.
Thank you very much for being here, Dan. I mean, hopefully you've managed to catch the last two games on iFollow and hopefully, well, enjoyed them to an extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we spoke before the Stoke game, and I unfortunately got my prediction wrong. Well, I got it right. I said 1-1, and that's how it panned out. We were so close to getting those first 3 points and really kicking on, and you just wonder if there was a little bit of that hangover going into the Derby game as well. And unfortunately, two sucker punches just before the break, and it's going away to a place like Pride Park, you're always going to be up against it coming back from 2-0 down. So we couldn't quite get anything out of that one, but some positive signs in the second half, and hopefully that momentum keeps us ticking along tonight.
Well, 1 minute precisely until we can reveal the team news. Hopefully, Dan, you did manage to get signed into iFollow. I know that while you and I were chatting last week, a lot of fans were struggling. Thankfully, all the problems are ironed out now.
Yeah, I was amongst the legion. To be fair to myself, I did leave it late because I was on the show. But eventually, I managed to get in. I think around about the 20-minute mark, and then was able to catch up as well and see the goal. And after that, it was all smooth. The same for the Derby game as well. No problems whatsoever. I think I tried both the audio only while I was out doing a bit of gardening and watching the game as well. So all smooth. Fingers crossed. Touching my wooden desk here that everything goes smoothly tonight. And
a tricky one this evening. You're expecting a tough test against Brentford.
I mean, look, the bookmakers aren't in the habit of losing money, and they've got Brentford nearly 2-1 on to win this game. I think Reading are 9-2 to win a game at home, which shows you just how strong they're fancied. But they're not the best away from home. We've done okay in recent weeks. In recent games, it's been a long few weeks, but hopefully we'll get the job done tonight and can upset those bookmakers.
Well, 5 p.m. has just come around, and here's tonight's team news. As you may expect in goal, Raphael. Fullbacks, Jordan Abita steps in for Omar Richards, Chris Gunter on the other side, Liam Moore captain again, and Michael Morrison steps in for the suspended Matt Miazga. Andy Rinomhota is going to base in the midfield with Ovie Ejaria and John Swift providing the creative outlets ahead of them. On the flanks, Yaku Meta and Michael Elise, who retains his space, and Sam Baldock comes in to start ahead of George Puskás, who drops to the bench. The bench is Sam Walker, Gareth McCleary, Tom McIntyre is back in, Tyler Blackett, Ayab Masika, Charlie Adam, Pele, Osho and Puskás. Well, Dan, your reaction to the team news, is that kind of how you might have expected it?
Yeah, I think off camera, you sort of asked me to guess the predicted team news. I think I got it right. Not surprised to see Puskás into the bench. He did struggle against Derby, and when he came on for João as well against Stoke as well, not looking effective. He just seems to struggle in this one striker formation where Lucas João just seems to take to it so well. He just needs that goal. We saw when he exploded into life at Wigan in that 3-1 victory that goals do so much for a striker, and he was in a decent little bit of form just before the break, and he seems to be just a little bit out of it. Sam Baldock offers a bit more work rate, a bit more sort of hustle and bustle, and hopefully that will create chances. And look, you've got a striker the quality of Puskás to come off the bench. I mentioned that Wigan game. We've seen what he can do. He has got the talent. It's just a case of getting that, getting up and running again. So hopefully he can do that. I mean, Jordan Abita, we know what he can do at left back. No issues there coming in for Omar Richards. And, just overall, happy. Michael Morrison in for Matt Miazga. We knew Matt was going to miss tonight's game after what happened in those tasty little scenes in the final minutes at Derby. But Michael Morrison, been there, done it. No problems whatsoever. And, you look at the bench, you have got the options. I thought Gareth McCleary did really well when he came on. That little bit of energy and now maybe we were missing in the first half. So a few options to play with, but overall not an unexpected team lineup.
Well, you mentioned missing Matt Miazga tonight, who has been suspended, of course. Really disappointing for him. Really, I guess he's a young man, probably a tempestuous attitude, which comes with the territory when you're a young lad. Yeah,
I mean, look, temperatures. boiling point, whatever you want to call it. Things can flare up in the heat of the moment. I think Lawrence put a nasty little tackle on him in the final minutes, and you could tell it really wound him up. And Lawrence hasn't got the greatest reputation in terms of on pitch conduct. He's known as someone that can wind up the opposition. And look, maybe Matt should have risen above it, but these things happen. I remember, what was it, Simon Church and Craig Bellamy in the tunnel at Cardiff once. We've had a few of these odd little ones. In the playoff final against Swansea, I think Jay Tabb got himself sent off at half time as well. So look, it's not unknown. Matt is young. He will learn from that. Hopefully, we can reach an agreement with Chelsea, because otherwise it could well have been his last game for Reading. So I hope it's not. I hope we can come to an agreement, because he is a player that's got a lot of potential, and I'd like to see him at the Valencia Stadium back for the end of this season and beyond, hopefully, if a deal can be worked out.
Yeah, certainly competition for the places. You mentioned, though, Michael Morrison. Yeah, he's going to be, we'll have a look at Brentford's team news in a short while, but he's got the experience, hopefully, to deal with all sorts of threats. We've got the likes of Ollie Watkins is going to be starting for Brentford, who's got pace and nous, but yeah, the experience sometimes counts for a bit extra as well.
Yeah, I said he's been there and done it, playing for Birmingham, and for us this season, we've seen what he can do. Liam Moore will have a point to prove as well, giving away that penalty up at Derby as well. He'll be wanting to sort of put in a solid game, skipper in the team. And, Brentford, they're third for a reason. They've got some real attacking threats. I know we're going to take a look at the team in a minute, but you mentioned Ollie Watkins, over 20 goals this season, plenty of interest reportedly coming from the Premier League, and you think he'll be there, whether it's with Brentford or with somebody else, fairly soon. But they've got threats all over the pitch, and I'm sure we'll come on to him as well. But a former Royal on the substitutes bench, I'm sure will be determined to get one over us as well.
Just a reminder that you can watch the game live on iFollow this evening. Season ticket holders can watch online for free. Make sure you've redeemed your promo code, which will have come to you via email a couple of weeks ago. All of the supporters can get a match pass for £10 if you're based in the UK or Ireland, or £5 for international supporters. And finally, if you're experiencing any issues, just email ifollow@efl.com. They'll offer you support getting logged in, or any technical problems you might be experiencing, which I'm sure is what you'll be doing in a well, you won't be emailing Dan, you've got all your technical issues sorted. But yeah, we're going to take a look at Derby. Let's get that one out of the way and take a look at the highlights from that match last weekend. We've already covered off the end of that game, Dan, the two red cards, so we'll gloss over that one. As far as the result went, though, Dan, do you feel like it was a little bit unjust, a little bit of a harsh reflection on the way the game panned out?
I mean, look, Reading started, I think, solidly in the first 20 minutes, and if George Puskás buries that chance he has, then you're talking about a completely different ball game. Yes, as I mentioned, we played some good football in the second half, but as Mick Gooding said, summarising the game, it's easy to play at 2-0 down when you're away from home. You've got nothing to lose. You're a bit more relaxed. The key for Reading is seeing things out in the final sort of 5 minutes of periods. In both games since the restart, we've seen it in the final 5 minutes of the second half against Stoke and in the final 5 minutes of the first half against Derby. I don't know what that is. Is that a sharpness thing? Is there some sort of a mental block? Is there oh God, we've got to keep things tight for these 5 minutes, just something sort of switch on? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure the sports psychologists and Mark Bowen will be able to answer that far better than I. But it's something that we've really got to focus on. We've seen it for the past 2, 3, 4 seasons. The popular joke with my looking at my watch, I can't wait for the first 5 minutes of a half and the last 5 minutes of a half to be over, because there just seems to be something, a little bit of a mental issue there for Reading. So, look, hopefully we've worked on things on the training ground. The amount of analysis and things that the players have got to work on now. Hopefully, we'll get this out of our system and we can have a nice, solid 90 minutes. But you pick a really tough opposition to do it against. Team third in the league and absolutely flying. But look, going back, just finishing off on Derby, they have got quality players. It was a fantastic finish by Lawrence and Wayne Rooney. You can have worse players to bury a penalty for you. So, as I said, from that point on, you go away to grounds like that in the top half of the table, and we've got to be honest with our position. It's always a bonus if you get something, but still disappointing.
And I think, as you mentioned there, those key moments can make a big difference. Football is a game that hinges on very tight score lines. You play for an hour and a half and you might get 1 or 2 goals. It's not like basketball where you go and outscore people. It really is about those being switched on, isn't it? And I think, I guess it's probably the difference between points in both of the first 2 games, really.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're talking at a few seconds. If Reading get to 0-0 at half time at Derby, maybe we end up with a point from that game. And look, we were so very, very, very close to getting 3 points against Stoke. So we could quite easily be sitting talking about Reading having 4 points out of 6 and still eyeing up the table. As it stands, 1 point from 6. And I think even the most optimistic Reading fan will say that the playoffs are pretty much gone. But it's a dangerous mindset for the players now, because we have got that, nice sizable cushion. I'm looking at the table now. It's 7 points and goal difference. So effectively 8 points Reading have got in hand on the bottom 3. Looking up the table, 11 points now and an inferior goal difference. So they've just got to be careful not to switch off. This is a game, I obviously really hoping Reading can win. But as I mentioned earlier, the bookmakers aren't in the habit of losing money. There's a reason Brentford are rampant favourites for this one. So, if things do go against us today and some results at the other end of the table go against us as well, you could be looking at a scenario with 4 points. Then do the nerves start kicking in? So, look, I just hope that Reading can pull off something, say get a point, or even if they play really well and we go down to a something that comes off someone's bum or something silly like that, at least you can say that they're building momentum. And I did think we did do that in the second half at Derby, so that's what I'm hoping carries over today.
Well, after the game at Derby, we caught up with goal scorer Andy Rinomhota and manager Mark Bowen.
I see teams in the playoff that are in the playoff positions are no better than us. In fact, I think we're a lot better than some of them in there. But over the course of the whole season, that we've got to make sure that we make those key games and key points in games count better than they are at the moment. But the lads, again, since I've come into the job here, that we're a good side and we're showing it. We haven't shown it in terms of results the last 2 games, but ironing out those key situations in games, key times in games, and those key decisions in games, then we'll turn those good performances into points.
Yeah, they're in good form in a minute. They had a good win yesterday against West Brom, so they're going to be coming here with in high confidence, but they are essentially coming to us, so we've got that advantage, and we'll just try and implement our style on them and try and limit them to as much damage as they can do. So, and hopefully we can just come away with the 3 points.
Exactly. No, they are the form side in the league since the start back. So again, we know it's going to be a tough game. But I said to the guys there, if we approach the game, certainly the second half as we did there today, on the front foot, looking to show what we're all about, maybe probably instead of being a little bit too passive, which we probably were in the first half, then we're more than capable of getting a result against Brentford.
Yeah, exactly. As good a side as they are, we're not going to try and worry about that too much. We'll just try and play our own game and make them change to adapt to us. So, and hopefully that can throw them off a bit. And then we've got quality on our side that we can beat anyone on our day. So as long as we're on it, we should come away with 3 points.
Just a reminder that you are going to need to head over to iFollow. You're not going to be able to watch the game here on YouTube with me and Dan. If you're a season ticket holder, you can watch online for free. Make sure you just redeem that promotional code, or if you've done so already, just make sure you log into iFollow. If you're a supporter that is not a season ticket holder, you can get a match pass for £10 if you're based in the UK and Ireland, or £5 for the rest of the world. And if you need any support or help, just email ifollow@efl.com, and there's technicians will guide you through. Well, as we mentioned earlier, we're going to take a little look at the team news for today's visitors, Brentford. David Raya, Rico Henry, Ethan Pinnock, Christian Norgard, Saeed Benrahma, Ollie Watkins, Josh Da Silva, Emiliano Marcondes, Pontus Jansson, Brian Mbeumo and Henrik Dalsgaard is the starting 11. Dan, where do you see the biggest threats coming from a Brentford point of view? And I'm sure there's plenty of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, we mentioned the main man. It's Ollie Watkins, isn't it? You know, he's got 20 goals. He got the winner against West Brom the other day. He's just one of the Championship's best strikers, and it's always difficult to keep someone as good as that out of the game. You know, and Michael Morrison's come back in tonight. We mentioned he's very experienced with Liam Moore as well, but they've got their hands full as well. So they've got Brian Mbeumo, who actually picked up COVID and came on off the bench against West Brom the other day as well. So it looks like he's fully fit now. He's starting as well. He's in double figures for the season as well, and Benrahma as well, double figures as well. You know, you compare it to Reading, I don't think we've got a single player in double figures yet. I think Puskás is leading the way with 9. So it shows the amount of goals that they've got in the team. And I mentioned the bench as well. Tariq Fosu, former Reading player, didn't leave in the best of circumstances. A little bit of sort of acrimony, I think, over the way things panned out for him under Yapstam. So, you know, he'll be desperate. I'm sure he'll be given some sort of a chance off the bench. Remember, you've got those 5 substitutes as well tonight. And especially with the amount of games both teams have been playing, you would expect a lot of those to be used. So, look, I expect to see Tariq come on and, you know, the luck of, the law of football is that he will go and do something against us. But hopefully those things can be suspended for today's game and we can pick up all 3 points.
Well, fingers crossed. He's kept quiet, and I think just picking on that point you mentioned about the 5 substitutes, you know, that could be made. Have you sort of, as you've been watching football since the restart, have you noticed the difference that's made? Because it feels like teams can suddenly introduce a lot of different game changers, you know, players with pace or, you know, a target man up front, and really refashion half the squad effectively, which is pretty can make a big difference, you know, to those teams without depth on their bench.
I mean, yes and no. I think managers are still getting used to how's best to use these substitutions. You know, it's great being able to bring on some fresh legs or someone with a bit different. But then, you know, you bring on too many players and suddenly players, you know, might not be fully sure of what their role is in the team. You know, maybe a manager's had to make an unexpected substitution along the way, so that can throw things off a bit. So it's one of those things where it's really tempting just to say, right, well, this isn't working, let's chuck on someone else. But there's also that sort of counter argument of, are you in danger of changing too much or changing things too soon? So it's nice that Reading substitutes bench has got a few different options. I noticed in the chat over on YouTube, someone was talking about Masika and the impact he might have. We've yet to see him really sort of tear it up. We know he's got this fantastic pace and a couple of little flashes in Derby, but for Reading to be able to bring on someone like that could be a real sort of benefit. I mentioned Gareth McCleary and his experience in Guile as well. So, you know, he's got a fantastic mentality. He's experienced. You know, he knows, you know, sort of how to unlock a Championship defence, even if maybe his pace isn't what it was sort of 4 or 5 years ago. And Puskás as well. So Mark Bowen's got plenty of options. It's just a case of using them at the right time. I think certain managers have got it right. I noticed Marcelo Bielsa saying that he thought that other managers weren't, or maybe were sort of using the substitutions to disrupt games rather than sort of, you know, use them for what they're intended for, which is fitness reasons. So look, it'll be a learning curve. We're 3 games back plus a couple of friendlies, so it'll take a while for the system to get fully ironed out.
We've got a couple of little stats to show you from Playmaker. I accidentally teased one just a moment ago. First of all, let's focus on the Reading-based stat, which has kind of come out. for the restart, Reading had more dribbles than any of the clubs sort of in Europe's top 5 leagues and England's top 4, with 445 beating Bayern, Wolves, PSG, Dortmund, Leverkusen and everyone else who's not on that list. But probably Brentford are more interested in the stat that Playmaker put out a couple of days ago, which is that Ollie Watkins has scored more league match-winning goals than any other player in those top 5 and England's championship during this season. Ollie Watkins, of course, he scored the winner when we went to Griffin Park earlier in the season. He scored the winner at the weekend against West Brom, and he's I guess a difference maker.
Yeah, look, we brought him up 2 or 3 times in this show, but it's not just the impacts that his goals have, it's the defences can take their eye off other players. And I mentioned the likes of Ben Rama. Teams are so worried about trying to contain Ollie Watkins that maybe they're not paying as much attention to somebody else, which opens up a bit more space, and that can create goals in itself. So it's the fear factor that a striker like that can bring. And we've been really lucky over the years at Reading to have strikers like that. When we had, a Jason Roberts, a Dave Kitson, and a Nicky Forster, a Jamie Curitan, Jimmy Quinn. They can really transform a side. And I guess that's what we were hoping to get out of George Puskas, but he's not quite been able to do that so far. But look, credit to Wally. Brentford have a great history of churning out these fantastic strikers, and I'm glad to see it's continuing. They've got a philosophy over there. They've been patient. They're a club on the up. They've got a new stadium on the way. They're taking one of our tenants with them in London Irish as well. So I feel a little bit sorry for Brentford fans. Obviously, they're not getting a chance to say goodbye to Griffin Park, one of the final few traditional stadiums we've got left here in England. So the fans aren't giving me a chance to say goodbye to that. I'm sure there'll be some sort of event to mark it, but it's a shame that this final season for them is being curtailed.
One final thing for me in this sort of obsession with Ollie Watkins. I saw him in my former life at Exeter City. I saw him playing as a 17-year-old. I think the first time I saw him was in a pre-season friendly against Chippenham. He came on at 1-0 and ended up 7-1 in favour of Exeter City. And I think he scored 1, created 2, and basically forced his way into a League 2 squad. And then on from there, it's all on the up. Just on Brentford, though, do you think that perhaps there might be, tonight's result becomes all the more important because they might even be thinking about the playoffs being their backup, really, because they're really taking points off of teams around them?
Yeah, well, I listened to Thomas Frank's post-match comments after that West Brom game, and the first thing he was mentioning was the Reading game. He said, look, winning against Fulham, winning against West Brom means nothing if we don't get the job done against Reading. That has got to be their focus. And look, Brentford are a team in form, and they picked up those 2 fantastic victories I mentioned. But if you do look over the course of the season, they have slipped up in games that you would say are easy. They've lost away at Luton, having earlier smashed them. What was it? I think 8-9-0, 7-0. Sorry, bit of credit to Luton. I'm sorry. They've drawn at Birmingham. They drew away at Huddersfield 0-0. They got beat at Millwall. So they got beat at Blackburn, Sheffield Wednesday. They're not the greatest of travellers, but everything has changed since the lockdown break, and they've come back all guns blazing. So again, I've said it a million times, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's going to be such a tough night for Reading. But if we could just get one of those sort of half chances early on and take it, the complexion completely changes.
Well, it was Brentford who took their early half chance on last Friday night. They played West Bromwich Albion on their TV game. Let's have a look at the highlights from that one. just a reminder that you can win a signed shirt if you tweet a picture using the Matchday hashtag. Hashtag REAVBRE, Reading versus Brentford. What we want to see is your best efforts at being an armchair fan, your room kitted out in all the Reading paraphernalia you can. Show us where you're watching tonight's game from, and I follow. And we'll pick a winner. You're in with a shout, Dan, with your room kitted out with.
I was going to say.
Well, you have to get on Twitter, get tweeted and stuff. Just looking back there, Brentford, great result for them. But you mentioned earlier as well the rivalry with Reading. We don't really have those local rivalries in the same way that if you go to the sort of northwest and you just got this glut of football clubs, our rivalry is a little bit softer in some senses. But Brentford's an amazing away day, and it'll be a shame not to be able to go back to Griffin Park again.
Yeah, I mean, look, we might have Oxford back in the Championship next season, so that would be good to get one. But sadly, Swindon and Oxford have been too rubbish in recent years for us to have a rival with them again, and Aldershot, less said about them, the better. So, yeah, you're right. We've had to sort of form these sort of mini, niggly sort of rivalries. And I think Brentford's one of them, going back to that 2002 promotion campaign, that, unforgettable day at Griffin Park where Jamie Curran lobs the keeper and sends us up into the First Division against Steve Coppell's Brentford, featuring half of the 106 team. And ever since then, it's just been sort of every time we've met, there's been, that little bit of niggle. I'm sure Brentford will say they've got bigger fish to fry. And I'm sure a lot of Reading fans will say, they've got bigger fish to fry. But it does always have that little bit of niggle thanks to that fixture and that magic day nearly 20 years ago now. But as I mentioned earlier, Griffin Park, one of those fantastic English venues. If you've never been, I mean, it's a shame that Reading are unlikely, unless something ridiculous happens, to ever get to play there again. But, pub on every corner, proper sort of, one of those grounds where you can see the floodlights in the distance, walking down. Sort of reminds you a little bit of Elm Park back in the day. And it's a shame to see it go, but look, they had to grow as a football club. They're building this new facility, London Irish moving in with them. So they're a club that have got a bright future. So they've been sensible. They've sold players at the right time for good profit. They're trying to be sustainable as a football club. They've got an ethos. So I've got a lot of admiration for what they're doing behind the scenes. And, it's showing on the pitch as well that they've come close a couple of times in the past few years. Usually it's been the away form that's sort of done it in for them. I guess that is the one worry with them leaving Griffin Park is, once you go to an all-seater, brand new stadium, does it have that same sort of effect of teams changing in a tiny changing room and, having fans on a terrace close to the pitch? Do you lose a bit of that? So it'll be interesting to see how that affects them in the future. But as far as Brentford fans are concerned, if they're in the Premier League, they won't care.
Well, it would certainly be a sort of cherry on the cake in their new stadium if they were in the Premier League. And every chance to go in there. Probably the opposite of what happened to Reading, right, when we moved here over 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. The Matchday Stadium was being built, and unfortunately, we got relegated at that 97-98 season. Just an absolute disaster of a campaign. On-pitch protests, signing 7 players on deadline day. It was a complete shambles. We even lost the final game at Elm Park 1-0 to Norwich. So, we went out with a bit of a whimper. And I remember, having done interviews from the Tilehurst End podcast, I spoke to players from that era, and they were talking about how in the first couple of years when we moved to the stadium, it actually lifted the opposition, because especially being in Division 2 back then, you got lots of teams who had never, played at all-seater stadiums like Reading's before. And that sort of counted against us because teams sort of raised their game for the occasion. I don't think that's going to happen to Brentford because, it's almost the opposite for them because they're one of the last on the bandwagon. It's more of a concern of, as I said, teams might pitch up there thinking, well, this is, we're used to this sort of stuff, rather than sort of losing those creature comforts they're used to. But as I said, it's the future. You can't hang on to the past forever. I'm sure there'll be lots of touches and homages to their old ground in the new stadium, and from their point of view, I'm sure they'll hope it's a smooth transition. You mentioned the game back in 2002 already. Do you fancy a little trip down memory lane? Please do. Please do. Here we go.
Owusu's done well here. He's got 2 coming into the centre for him. Owusu tries to pick him out and does! It's Rowlands! Kick that Vivash is going to take. Delivers it up towards Parkinson, who got the flick on. Kiraton! Yes! Majestic finish! A laid-back celebration Does he know the importance who has put him on the bench? He put him on the pitch midway through the second half, and boy has he delivered. Jamie Cureton. Wonderful first touch, and the finish, given the circumstances, extraordinary. A freakish own goal did them on that occasion, and they are up. Reading have been promoted this time. He can hardly match the dancing celebrations of the supporters. The tension almost too much for the manager. It's a draw. They hated the draws in recent times that have denied them the championship. Operations now. Cureton the hero, fittingly heading straight onto the M4, which is barely a goal kick from here, and they'll be on Sunday afternoon. The interviews, but all you really need to know is that Brentford are in the playoffs.
Well, by my calculations, Dan, you'd have been about 15, 16 years old, and is that right when that happened?
Yeah, I was. I think I was just about to be 16 at the time. I couldn't get a ticket for Griffin Park that day, so the club had set up a big screen on the Matchday Stadium pitch, and I think the whole East Stand was full of Reading fans. There must have been about 5,000-6,000 fans all watching this big screen. And you know, when the full-time whistle went, we invaded the pitch. I don't know why we invaded the pitch, but we did it anyway. And you know, I headed off into town to join up with some other friends and celebrate. And I think most fans stayed behind to welcome them back on the coach. Just a great, you know, I've got, you know, it's one of those hairs on my arms are standing up. That's the beauty of football, is that 20 years after that happened, and just from, you know, watching a YouTube clip brings back so many great memories. And the tension that we'd been through in that season, you know, the commentator mentioned the draws. We had basically blown the championship. We'd been on a really horrendous run of just draw after draw after draw after draw. And the irony of that draw being good enough to get us up in the end was fantastic. And it was the start of something special. We had a lot of players who went on to play in that 106 team. And a lot of them were on the opposition, as I mentioned that day. I think the likes of Steve Sidwell and Eva Ingemarson and Sonko were all involved that day. Obviously, Steve Coppell in the opposition dugout. So it's a game that, you know, if you look at Reading's history and what if, that's one of those sliding doors moments. If we hadn't got that draw that day, who knows where we'd be, but thankfully we did. And yeah, I could watch that over and over again.
Well, less than half an hour until the latest edition of Reading versus Brentford. But yeah, I mean, just it's interesting that, you know, you should say Jamie Cureton too. He scored lots of. He's been popular everywhere because he scores goals. But I think the fact that he scored that goal, it puts him in folklore, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Reading's iconic goals over the years. You know, the previous generation, we'll mention Robin Friday's goal against Tranmere, or one of the goals from the Simod Cup final. But for sort of my generation, it will be Cureton's goal, and then, you know, Michael Leisurewood's goal against Nottingham Forest, you know, a decade later. Thankfully, in the 106 season, we had so many goals. It's almost that you don't have a particular standout iconic moment. Maybe you say Murty's penalty against QPR, but that season was so good you didn't need one moment. For that sort of era, that was a real sort of turning point after quite a few years of sort of heartache and misery, losing to Bolton in the playoff final, getting relegated, losing to Walsall at Cardiff, and you just had that pure elation after sort of 6-7 years of real sort of toil and misery. It felt like Reading were finally going back on the up.
Just a reminder of the team news today for Reading. In goal is Raphael, and a back four of Jordan Abita, Chris Gunter, Liam Moore and Michael Morrison, who comes in for Matt Miazga. Andy Rinomota, Ovie Ajaria, John Swift in the midfield three. Yaku Mata and Michael Elise will provide support to Sam Baldock. On the bench, Sam Walker, Gareth McCleary, Tom McIntyre, Tyler Blackett, Ayab Masika, Charlie Adam, Pele, Gabriel Osho and George Puskas. And a little reminder too, Dan, of the final 7 fixtures of the season after tonight's game against Brentford, right away to Luton Town on Saturday for a 3 p.m. kickoff. Back here in a week's time against Huddersfield, and then on to Charlton. Middlesbrough are our next visitors in a fortnight on Tuesday evening. Then our final away day of the season, the Inflatables Day, if you like. We'll have to take them on behalf of people on Saturday the 18th of July. And then we're back here on Wednesday the 22nd of July for the final fixture against Swansea. Fixture time to be confirmed. Yeah, those fixtures, Dan, as you mentioned, there's all sorts of teams we're playing against with different things to play for as well, and that adds a different kind of dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah, firstly and most importantly, if I don't see you with a giant inflatable digger bouncing around the away end on your own at Blackburn, I will be massively disappointed. We had an inflatables day there in our first Premier League season, and I did actually get taken out by a giant inflatable JCB digger, so got a little bit too inflatable that day. But yeah, look, loads of teams with loads to play for. I mean, Luton are fighting for their lives down at the bottom of the table. Same with Huddersfield as well, and Charlton, Middlesbrough. New manager, Mr. Warnock, patrolling the sidelines at Matchday Stadium once again. He loves getting one over us. Hopefully we won't give him that satisfaction again. Blackburn chasing the playoffs, and Swansea faintly chasing the playoffs as well themselves, although it's looking increasingly unlikely for them. But and that's why I mentioned earlier that Reading have got to be careful not to get themselves into trouble. We even if we just pick up a couple of draws in these next two games, just keep that points tally ticking over, because the last thing you want creeping into the minds of fans and players and the manager is, oh, we really need to get something today, because then you can force a pass. You can, you've got that extra thing going through your head when you're about to take a shot, or, you're a goalkeeper, you've got someone bearing down on you. If you've still got that cushion, you've got that little bit more relaxed mentality. Anybody that's played, a game of FIFA or a part game of football, you play your best when, you're relaxed about it and, you're just going with the flow. So the beauty of the Championship is everyone can beat everybody, but that's also the danger of the Championship. So you can't sit there and say, okay, well, Huddersfield beat them earlier in the season, they're down there, that'll be 3 points. Charlton, they're rubbish, 3 points. Borough at home, they've been rubbish, 3 points. Anything can happen, and it's important that Reading just get the job done.
That's all well and good, Dan, but let's put on the important points. Which is your favourite inflatables day you've been to?
I think it's that one, even though I did get taken out by Bob the Builder inflatable digger. We were so close to getting into Europe, and we had a disallowed goal, I think, from Brynjar Gunnarsson. It was rightly ruled out, but it's going from one goal away from Europe and to finish our best ever season, 8th in the Premier League. It was a fantastic day, great game as well, 3-3. The Birmingham away day after we'd already clinched the Championship was good fun, although we lost that game. So it took, and the weather I think was awful that day as well, so that took a bit of a shine off it. But yeah, it's hard to look past that Blackburn game.
Got to say, I enjoyed the Pirelli Stadium in 2017. That was well, if you needed any equipment for your beach holiday, it was all there. And then obviously there was a T-Rex floating around the riverside last year for quite a long time that Matt Miazga eventually jumped on and popped. So that was that. Dad, if we can talk about something that I guess slightly more sombering, if you like. Of course, last weekend, back on the 10 days ago, there's some tragic news come out of Reading. In 2016, our first team squad visited Forbury Gardens. We placed the club in the heart of our community, and 10 days ago, that community's heart suffered unimaginable hurt and pain and horror and tragedy. And even though football had returned that day, by the evening, that didn't really matter anymore. And tonight we return to Matchday Stadium, and we're going to be falling silent for a minute before kick-off in memory of those people who lost their lives. And Dan, of course, you are Reading through and through. Tell me about, if you don't mind, about hearing the news and what was going on 10 days ago.
Yeah, I live not too far away from the town centre, going off towards Early, and you as with most of these stories, you start seeing things on social media. There's been an incident, and then more details emerge, and it's just, your heart just completely sinks, because you desperately hope that the reports are sensationalized, and that everyone's okay, and to find out that 3 people sadly lost their lives, it's heartbreaking. And to happen in your own town, most people watching this, would have strolled through Forbury Gardens. It's a beautiful place, one of the best places to sort of go through in Reading. And I went there lots as a teenager, just sitting there enjoying the sunshine. And to think that 3 people went there, enjoying themselves and weren't able to come home it's heartbreaking. But we mentioned last week in talking about the sort of Black Lives Matter and the NHS and their efforts to the coronavirus. If there is one positive to take from this, it has been the community of Reading, from the football club to the people of the town. It brings and it shows the very best in people when other people are at their very worst. the way everyone's come together. Fan groups were trying to raise money for a banner. I know Club 1871 were trying to do that, and such things can hopefully make just a tiny bit of difference to the friends and family of the victims, and hopefully it provides them strength to know that they're not alone in this, that they've suffered this terrible loss, but they're not alone. Reading is strong. Reading has got some fantastic people in it, and we'll remember the victims forever. But we're stronger than that. We will come back, and we want to show people and demonstrate that these acts won't deter us from going out and enjoying ourselves and leading our way of life. So just horrible scenes.
Oh, very well said, Dan. Thank you for that. We're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes' time, because we're going to be kicking off in just over 20 minutes' time. We'll press you for a score prediction. Dan, can we do that? I know Brentford are obviously a high-quality team, but the manager and Andy were both confident that if we went out in attacks, we could potentially get the 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, look, last week I said my head said 1-1 and my heart said 1-0 to Reading. My heart once again says we're going to get something out of the game. I think my heart today is going for 1-1. My head, if I'm being brutally honest, I just think Brentford might have too much for us. But this is one of those occasions where I'm going to predict a 2-1 win for Brentford, but very much hoping that I'm wrong. It's one of those sort of, I'm hoping that because I said that, it won't happen. Usually if I go and actually put money on it, it will happen. So if anyone wants to fund me for that, please do. But no, in all seriousness, look, anything can happen in the Championship. If Reading take one of those chances, said that derby game could have gone so very, very differently if George Puskás takes that chance early. Hopefully one falls to Sam Baldock. We go 1-0 up, and we're off to the races from there. So, as I said, I've got to go with the logic here, and the logic says that Brentford are on a great run, and they probably just have a bit too much for us. But if Reading do walk away with anything, I'm not going to be surprised at all, because we've got some fantastic quality in our side.
Well, we certainly have. Again, 20 minutes until kick-off. So, Dan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We're going to wrap up there. And, you're going to be enjoying the match on iFollow and chatting to your dad like last time, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be in touch with Wim Senior. I'll also have my daughter to deal with downstairs. It's around her dinner time, and her bedtime. So hopefully, I can marry the two things. I said it's a really weird experience having to try and juggle sort of family and football at the same time. Usually, it's your sort of escapism on a weekend or a weeknight. But hopefully, I can get away and hopefully see us get a result.
Well, thanks very much, Dan, for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
Well, and everyone should be heading over to readingfc.co.uk now, or opening the Reading official app to watch the match. It's all streaming now, and you'll be able to listen to the commentary before kick-off as well. So all that remains is to wish us good luck, and come on, you Rs.
Go on, you Rs.